Hey there. So this is kind of sort of the post Monday morning wrap and me easing my way back into trying to develop a podcast. So I tried to do that earlier in the summer and I wasn't pleased with how it came out. I think I need to put more thought into it and have a little bit more structure. And obviously it'd be nice to have time to do it where I'm not driving down the road and you don't have all this wind noise and creaking in the background. Uh, Newer phone, I'm hoping that the audio focusing is a little bit better with it because it's supposed to be just focus for speech. So I'll see how this goes and see if it tones down some of that extraneous noise. And if so, yeah, maybe we'll go with this. If not, this will be a fun one off. But things will get further afield if this does seem to work out well as a start for a podcast. It'll just be the morning wrap. But for the morning wrap, had 4 people on the mats today. No-gi. It's nice and fun. We did the no-gi lasso. Did this, gosh, I want to say like 8, 9 months ago. Sometime we had it again in the past year. It was back when John was a white belt. I think Chrissy was just starting, and I can't remember who else was there and where they were at in their journeys. But it's come back around. And I like the no-gi lasso because it's something that feels like you shouldn't be able to do in no-gi, but you can pull it off and it can be effective. You just have to really nail that two-on-one grip. And every time I teach it, I learn something more. I make sure to illustrate to people like this is not the most efficient way to get into this position. I do this because we really want to work on some of the fundamentals of switching your hips. So I always make sure they knee shield first and then get their other knee up and inside, and then we switch over to attacking the lasso and setting it up. And you're doing a full hip switch every time you do that because people don't move their hips enough. And I hope that that back and forth will kind of set that in their mind that like you can maneuver around the body a lot just by moving your hips, and you don't even have to put your feet on the floor. You just have to use your opponent's body to lift and scissor and your hips. I don't know if everybody gets it, but I see a little bit more of it every time. So we're doing good. Seems to be hard for people to remember that you want to move your butt to the side of that trapped arm that you want to lasso. I can understand how that is because normally we're moving to face. Whenever we shrimp, we're turning to face our opponent and face the thing that we want to be focused on. So, like if you're escaping half guard or side control, you'll be stripping your butt away from them, turning towards them, and driving your knees back in there to make that frame. So it feels like you want to face that arm and attack it, but you don't. You want to come around the backside of that arm so that it's in between your legs in that direction and then attack it. I guess it's still turning, focusing, and facing just seems to be counterintuitive for most folks. They want to flip the other way. So that's something I got to keep working on cues for. Uh, Taught myself today, was able to narrow down on what makes things work with getting a nice tight grip when you've got that hoagie grip for the two-on-one in no-gi. It helps to get it as close to your chest as you can. You want to get it there and hold it there, isometric hold with your lats and your biceps, everything contracted tightly. But it's really hard to just pull it from all the way out to get it to your chest. So getting your hips all the way over allows you the biggest area, the loosest hips, the most comfortable way to get your foot around their body and laced into the lasso, and it lets you get the deepest. I noticed people who were short shrifting themselves on that hip uh, movement were staying mostly centered, or maybe moving their butt out a little bit. They had a harder time getting deep, so they were ending up with a shallow lasso as their default because they didn't have a whole lot of maneuverability. To get all the way over on your sides, you can get that really deep lasso, really lace it through there good. Get the foot extended beyond the back. I know you'll eventually wear this down to where you don't have to do that, but for now, make that landmark. Get all the way over, get that foot way behind the back, and then retract it so that the top side of your foot, the laces of your foot, if you will, are against the person's back. And the bonus of that is when you set the really deep lasso, it's way more painful when you come back to center, way more of a bicep slicer, which makes people far more compliant when you go to sweep them. But it also helps that when you've got that really deep lasso and you pull it back and you've got your toes against the back of their lat or on their back somewhere, you're able to use your leg to draw them into you as well. So you can all of a sudden use your whole body to contract and pull their arm to your chest. Once you've done that, you've got really good control. I had a conversation with somebody last week about, like, what does it mean, like, when Emily says, get a grip, get your grip? Well, part of that is get the grip you want. But I also interpret it as, if you've got a grip, it needs to be your grip. If you have 2-on-1, but they've got their arm fully extended out and they're leaning back and your arms are down by your thigh or your knee now, that's not really your grip. You do have a grip, but it's not your grip. You have not established dominance with it. But when you've got your leg extended to their back, then you retract it and you've pulled everything to your chest and you're now tight in there and their arm is cantilevered over, that's your grip. So think about that in different formats. Like, how can you make this grip your grip? Just about any time you're doing something, unless you're intentionally pushing away, you've got a grip and you're straight armed out, better chance than not it's not your grip. But if you're tight in and you've got it attached to your body, you've got a lot more leverage against them. So little things to think of there. Other than that, everybody was doing great getting the movement. It's fun seeing how, as I've said before, like, experience versus athleticism and what it does for you. Just watching Kanan, our newest white belt. He's a very athletic young man, and it's standing him in good stead. Like, he's getting passes just because he's small, so he can fit through spaces. He's squirrely, and he's just able to wend his way through there. So he's getting passes in nogi. Like, he doesn't know what to do yet, so he's having a hard time passing open guard. But once he gets contact with the body, like if somebody puts him in closed guard and they're not just focused on closed guard, he's able to start passing. He's able to start knee slicing. So that's really cool to see. I wish I had started off with that level of ability. He's going to do really good if he sticks with this, and he seems to be pretty focused. And then it's interesting to watch more experienced people, and some of them are kind of that mid-level blue belt area, and they're still learning, and they've got more experience, so you can tell their weight's better. They kind of know where they want to go. They've got some level of technique, and they're trying to make it work and try to learn at the same time. That's a tough combo, but they're pulling it off. And then there's other people who are up in that purple belt range and have gotten a bit jaded and aren't really paying attention to what we're learning, and they're just doing what they're going to do anyway from the starting point that we assigned. I don't think that's a great way to approach things. I think you should try to hit exactly what you're being taught and see how and why it does or does not work for you and what you can do about it to make it work for you. I think if you take whatever position and then about halfway through the move, because you move too fast, you don't get it, you just go to whatever your normal thing is, I think you're really cutting yourself short. I think you're really stunting your growth. But hey, some people, they just want to get reasonably good, and then they want to play their A game, and they just want to come in and be fit and have some community. Jiu-jitsu's, it can be for everybody. Jiu-jitsu is for everybody. Not everybody is for jiu-jitsu. But I think people have different goals. And if your goal is just to continue to keep yourself moving, get to a level where you can survive and you can enjoy it, if that's your big end goal, then I think people who are drilling in that manner are probably accomplishing their goal. I think it would be better for them to push themselves a little bit more. So if you're earlier on in this, I really think you're going to set yourself up well for success if you develop a really good habit of drilling for the sake of drilling, not for the sake of barreling through the technique or getting the end result of a sweep or submission at the cost of abandoning the technique. I think once you've got some experience and you have tried the technique and you've got it and you're like, okay, so we've got it, this is working well, it's smooth, I'm doing what we've been taught, and it seems to be working well. If you want to tie on some follow-on stuff, if you want to play with, well, what if I'm approaching it, I'm coming in from a little different angle, does this tie into this other thing we've been working on? Those are all really cool approaches. I've seen them stand in really good stead. Joe and I, when we were in the same classes, that's how he would approach things, just nail what we've got and hit a bunch of reps on it. Okay, we've got it good. Now, what's it like if I start playing with angle on this or pressure here, pressure there, and we would start feeding each other more or less resistance? That led to some very fun stuff. And I think you can experiment, especially as you get into that up blue, into the purple and beyond, and you know what you're doing and you've given the technique its due diligence. That's when you're good to go and start playing with stuff. And I think you can start to do that at lower belts too, if you've put in enough time and effort with it. And it's cool to see more experienced folks doing that. And if you're training with one, they might try with something. But your job as the less experienced person is just learn the technique that you've been shown. All right. So yeah, I guess let me know what you guys think of this format. If it's a real pain in the ass, if it's cool, I don't know. I have found it worthwhile for me to have the paid version of YouTube, so I could turn it off and listen to it as just a headphone podcast when the video's running. I know other people, you have to have the video the whole time, so it might not be convenient for you. And if enough folks say, hey man, this is stupid, go back, then I'll go back. But otherwise, like I said, I want to try to get out into the podcasting sphere a little bit. And I'm not trying to make it a big, fancy podcast. I just feel like the reason I like the podcasts and the videos that I do is because they tend to be somebody just having a conversation. And it might be one-sided, but it is a longer format, more thought out conversation. It's just you talking with the person, or that person talking as they would if they were talking to you. I really enjoy that about Joe's podcast, BJJ Meditations. I guess you would call it a style podcast by a guy named Carl Murowski, but he's got a portion of it where it's just coffee with Carl. It's just him. He's a working guy. Got some interesting experience in life, and he's just kind of talking with you. And I enjoy that. I think that as adults, it's hard to make friends. It's hard to find time to have friends, and it's very hard to find time to just shoot the shit. When's the last time you were able to peel away from your daily responsibilities and your family and everything to go just sit and have coffee for an hour with a friend and just talk about life? So I think this is a modern interpretation of how to do that. And hopefully, it works out and people start to do it back and forth and you actually have conversations rather than, monologues. But it's at least a step. It's something. Okay, that's enough for me. Let me get this posted up and see how it goes. Take care, everybody.